less you are having trouble actually visualizing what's going on, okay? That's part of the problem. They're both the same distance from the road, A and B, yeah? A, B, both heading in, okay? Now, you're looking to minimize the distance between these two guys. That distance there, okay? Now, the first instinct is, well, obviously, the distance is going to be least when they get to the origin, okay? But the problem with that is,
They're not traveling the same speed.
right, so I've got one guy going at 30 k's an hour, okay? And the other one traveling faster, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, they'll both pass the origin, but not at the same time, right? So being that, Justin, being that, you're going to have, the passage of time, this one, B, right? He's going to get in closer, right? So just imagine what's going to happen after, say, an hour, okay? After an hour, from 100, right? That's where they're starting. He's going to be here at, say, 60 kilometers from the intersection, right? Whereas this one will be at 70. So this is what you've got joining them. Shorter, fine. Another hour, you're up to, say, 20, but he's still stuck up at 40 kilometers away, right? So you're getting this gradient changing, all right? Now, if I go another hour, where will they be?
This one would have crossed.
Okay, this one's actually going to go all the way across to the other side, right? So to be consistent, I'll call that minus 20, right? Because he's on the negative side. This one is still up above, right? He's going to be at 10. So I've still got this distance in between them. It looks like it's less, but it starts to get worse, right? This guy's going to pass the intersection. He's going to be at minus 20, okay? And this guy, off he goes. I guess he'll be at minus 60 at this point, right? So you can see it's starting to get worse. So therefore, I'm going to have some kind of position in between here where I'm at the sweet spot. Yeah, so far so good. All right, now, that's trying to understand what's going on. If you put together a simplified diagram, there's my intersection, okay? Here's A and B. Usually we start off and we assign some pronumerals, right? Now, a very common sense way to do this is say, well, look, horizontal distance here, call that X, right? Vertical distance here, call it Y. So then you start to think about, well, how am I going to get rid of one of these variables, right? This is the distance, call it D. Now, has anyone spotted already? What's the problem with assigning pronumerals like that? Any challenge? What do you think, Ravi? Any ideas? There's a significant problem.
You can't.
X and Y, right? Usually, with two variables, I ought to be able to do something, like say relate area or gradient or something like that, which will allow me to get one in terms of the other, right? Now that assumes there's a relationship between the two. The problem here is, there is not a relationship between the two, right? This guy's heading in at one speed, this guy's heading in at another. They're independent of each other, okay? It's not like one's dragging the other along, okay? So what you're actually going to need to do is introduce something which we're going to deal with as a whole topic later on. I talked about this a couple of days ago under parametrics. We're going to introduce a new pronumeral, a parameter, okay? Now instead of X and Y, let's think about what these things are doing, right? Where do they start at? Where do they begin? They both start 100 away, okay? So I'm going to call, let's start with this horizontal one. I'm going to call the starting position 100. Now as time progresses, this distance gets shorter, right? What rate does it get shorter at?
40 kilometers an hour.
Well, the one I've drawn at, 40 kilometers an hour, right? So it's getting smaller, so I'm going to take a subtraction, right? And for every hour, it gets 40 smaller, right? So let's call T the time in hours. Does that make sense? So what I'm thinking about is all of this in terms of a third item, right? This time variable. So now you can think about what this one up here will be, right? It's also going to start off at 100, but it's not going to be 100 minus 40t. It'll be minus 30t, right? Okay, now, there's my clue. I want you to go back to the drawing board and see if you can come up with an equation for D that you can differentiate. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to have a go at that.